So good morning, everyone, and welcome to Political No Brainer, the podcast where we move past winner takes all politics and into real conversation. Today, I'm excited to be joined with Sadie Holzmeyer of the executive of Digital Democracy Project. And Digital Democracy Project really puts the voting process of the House and the Senate and legislation all across the country in 7 states nationally, on a national level, all in all the states, and in 7 states on a state level. It puts the voting process in the fingertips of Americans. And that's what we need. We need Americans to chime in. What we've seen is our founding fathers always intended for our House representatives to leave their homes, go to Washington for 2 years, and then return to their homes and bring concerns in their communities to the Washington, D.C. level, and then return to their homes. We haven't seen that. Obviously, that's all changed. Congressmen and women are hanging around for 100 years. But this really changes the dynamics of all that. So I'm glad to have Sadie jump right in, tell us all about the Digital Democracy Project.
Yeah, happy to be here. That was a good intro because, yeah, we're all about building a voter driven system of government. Digital Democracy Project is putting the power in the hands of voters to weigh in directly on legislation. So, voters across the country right now are able to vote on the same bills as legislators, and they say if they support or oppose how they want their legislators to vote. And then with Digital Democracy Project, we're posting all these real-time results on our website. So not only do the legislators know what the voters want, but everyone's now able to see. So really adding that level of transparency. And then that's kind of the first part of it, showing what the voters want. And then after our legislators vote, we're really trying to make that connection to how well they're matching what the voters wanted. So we're generating scorecards. You can see how every legislator voted on the bill, how closely it matched how their voters wanted them to vote. And then that's where voters have the power to also hold legislators accountable. If they don't like how they're delivering, how they're matching what voters want, then at election time, they'll be more aware, have that info to hold them accountable.
And that's just incredible that you're doing that. Now, I'm going to throw a question out there out of left field. Have you ever thought about including this in the school classroom? Or if not in the school classroom, because I've gotten the memos that the K through 12 system is pretty much structured and the teachers union is pretty much the most powerful union ever. But have you ever had the idea of gathering? I know you're still I don't know that you're in the beginnings, but I know you're still building this program in a big way of gathering kids in a restaurant or a local church and going over a certain vote and having them chime in on voting. It's sort of a civics class, I guess you would say a civics class on steroids, really getting young people involved, because where we've lost it all is elected officials get elected by presenting whatever works and then doing what works for them and their big donors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I've especially had an interest in using it for like educating, getting students kind of more engaged in the political system because I feel like the policies are the most interesting part of government. And then how the legislators are voting, it's what's really tying that in. So I have done a presentation to one of I think it was Florida Polytechnic University. One of the professors there had me present to the students, and I thought that went really well. It was really interesting. And then I was just tabling at a protest the other day, and another Florida professor came up and was really interested in using this for her class, kind of as like a project that they can use kind of to narrow in on a bill and kind of educate about it. So yeah, I thought that's definitely something really interesting that I really hope that we can do more of.
And I think you're yeah, in the beginning, it's gonna probably be you generating it, but I really do think it's gonna turn into something that's just gonna happen over time more and more. And that is another. So what we're seeing in politics today is we're seeing a lot of young people involvement. There's a particular person that generally comes up in every conversation. That's great. But the fact of the matter is, where the voting happens, presidents don't write laws, they sign them into law. And where the voting happens is at the legislative level, the House and the legislature at the state levels. And this is just an incredible program. Something I always point out to people is when President Obama, who was essentially, I guess you would say, more articulate, in ways a more popular president, and in ways he was more embraceable, more approachable. Even though he was all that, locally, we as Democrats, we lost 1,200 seats in local government all across the country during his 8-year term. Now, when you get this involved, and these 1,200 particular individuals that didn't get elected have understand the pulse of what the people want, not necessarily just cater to the special interests, that could change their prospects too, right?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I think so. I mean, for one, not only voters being able to weigh in, but yeah, the legislators, candidates getting that information to help inform their voting and the accountability aspect of it too. Like, are they representing voters or are they representing other special interest donors? So, really making that more apparent too.
And that's a big part of that report card that you're generating, right?
Yeah, yeah. So the unique thing about the report cards that we're providing, we're mostly just as an organization providing the technology, and then we're not the ones evaluating legislators. We're providing that technology where the voters are the ones evaluating their legislators. So every legislator's vote gets compared to how the majority of the voters had voted. So we're just showing how often they're matching. And then that's how the legislators are evaluated. So yeah, it's really the voters driving the accountability in that way as well.
And that's 100% of what you want. If the voters, this is a reality that generally legislators vote about 5% of what people really want. They really pursue about 5% of what they promised and vote for about 5% of what the people really want. Now there's this right there at their fingertips. They got a full understanding of how bad it is, or if they're actually keeping the agreement that they made when they were out there plugging for the office. And
Mhm.
this is really a big tool that could change the dynamics of American politics. And we're seeing a lot of this kind of stuff happening all the time. And I really think that we're going to see a brighter future for America if American voters are more engaged. So, how did this all start? How did were you with was Ramon Perez? Was he a founder, or did you guys start together?
Yeah, Ramon, he's the founder, executive director. A lot of his inspiration for starting Digital Democracy Project came from his experience as a veteran and especially like seeing the events unfold on January 6th kind of really inspired this. And then I found out about it kind of completely random. I had a similar idea about kind of a way to these policies that the polling shows that a majority of voters want a way to really give that more weight and get more input from voters to, I guess, like show that there's real support behind it to influence legislators and using technology as a way to do that to kind of get that mass input. I was trying to find a way to make that happen to pursue that. And just from a random Google search, stumbled across Digital Democracy Project and it seemed so much like what I had in mind. And they were much further along. So I actually moved from Indiana to Florida when we were at the state level in 2023 and Florida only at that time doing state legislation. So I moved down to help with outreach. And that was at the same time when we had our first political endorsement. So he was a candidate running at the first state house saying that he wanted to use this technology as a way to hear from voters. So we did a lot of direct voter contact and letting voters know about this technology and that they had a candidate running that wants to use it to hear from them. And so that's where we started, how I got involved. And then 2024, we expanded to where we were carrying federal legislation for Florida voters to weigh in on. So then you could also see what the members of Congress in Florida were doing as well. And then 2025, we expanded to where any US voter can vote on federal bills. And then now 2026, we've expanded to the state level in 7 states. And then 2027, we're planning on being in all 50 states carrying state legislation. And then we'll always continue doing federal bills that any US voter can weigh in on too.
Wow, so you're on schedule to be in all 50 states in less than a year.
Mhm. Yeah,
Wow,
it's
that's
an
incredible.
ambitious goal.
And it will happen. And that is a big goal, but it will happen because and this is Ramon's journey started after serving in the military, where cost and stakes of democracy became very real to him. The cost and stakes of today are very real to all of us. And I'm not saying I disagree with what's going on or I agree. I'm just saying when we think about what's going on, wouldn't it be incredible if people had this at their fingertip in all 50 states and able to really weigh in on the next election cycle? Because I think what happens is we really get fixated on the president. And here and there, we get really interested in a senator or a governor. But at a local level, where it really matters, where it all really happens, we have no understanding of what's really going on. And this, what you and Ramon have created, changes all that. And you've got this giant agenda to be in all 50 states in less than a year, or well, you got the whole year of 2027, really. So you got a year and a half. But but it's still pretty big to go to get the 43 states done. How do you initiate each state? I got to ask that question.
Yeah, so how it started for Florida, we have a legislative coordinator, and he actually works as a legislative aide in Tallahassee. So he's in all the meetings, in the at the Capitol, aware of like what's coming up for a vote, all the schedules. So he's been super helpful in helping us get those relaying the bills at the Florida state level, and he's really well informed about at the federal level too. So he's been super helpful from the start. That's been like a core aspect of this. So as far as like expanding to all 50 states, what's really helpful, what it really comes down to, we kind of have the technology tested out to be able to like load the bills, put them in front of voters. But what's really going to be important is getting the input about which bills are advancing that are coming up for a vote, so we know which ones to post in the app, because we don't post every single bill. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of bills. So yeah, getting that timeline for like which bills to post when, and that's kind of where we're looking to develop more connections, either organizations or find other organizers, activists in other states to kind of really help with that. We connected with a Washington organizer she's going to help run like our Washington and Oregon and Idaho states. And then yeah, we're looking to kind of make more connections. There's some tools that we've been using to help kind of get that info. But yeah, I think that as far as expanding to 50 states, that's where it'll be really helpful to get more input from people on the ground to help us make sure we're covering the right bills and making sure we're including all the details that are really important to voters too.
Yeah, and when you talk about each bill and every bill and the thousands of bills, every single one of them has a lot of legal jargon in there. Is there anything that helps people with that?
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, so our founder actually has a background in AI. He's worked in that field for a decade or so. And so he has used AI, integrated it into digital democracy projects. So it'll actually help us process the bill text. Because when we had started, we had two legislative coordinators in Florida that were reading through the full bill text and summarizing them. And it was just an near impossible workload. So AI has been really helpful for kind of helping draft like a template summary. And then we're able to have people review that, add any info. And then additionally, we have one of our newest features. It's called VoteBot. And on each of the bills, it's preloaded with the bill text. So individual voters can use it at any time too. They can ask questions like, why was this bill filed? What does this mean? How does this impact such details? So that's a way for the bot can give direct responses about the bill. And another way I like to use it too, well, we're also pulling, like kind of scraping the web for stances organizations take on bills, displaying those too. So I like to ask VoteBot, like, why did this organization oppose this bill, and kind of get some more insight on the bill too. And it can search the web, kind of pull citations too. So it's a really great way to help any voter really get more info about the bill and get that insight knowledge too. That's really difficult, and breaking down that legal jargon too that's not really made to be accessible to everyday voters.
Right, because in a sense, if that tool or that way of the way you're doing it wasn't there, you might lose people may lose interest in the idea of looking at bills. And then I got to ask a question because in Florida, we seem to have a lot of constitutional amendments on the ballot. It seems like I've come to the realization that literally it takes about $20 million to get an amendment on the ballot, and yet we're still at 7 or 8 every election cycle. So I don't know where the $150 million comes from every 2 years, but it comes and it happens. Are you covering constitutional amendments as well?
Yeah, that's a good
Statewide?
topic. Yeah, so Florida, I know there were recent ones that were kind of where the citizens gathered the petitions to get it onto the ballot. And those we hadn't covered because we're usually always tying like a bill to how the legislators are voting. And in a citizen led constitutional amendment, especially the voters are the ones at election time that are able to determine if the bill passes or not. So kind of what we're doing is expanding what's happening in a constitutional amendment to every piece of legislation. So, however, though, in Virginia, they had some that the legislature they passed through session, they voted on it to get it onto the ballot for voters to then weigh in on. So we have the mid-decade redistricting, we covered that one. And then there were three others about like restoring rights, voting rights for felons, people with a felony record, and then marriage equality and the right to reproductive freedom. So those were four that we did cover at the state level in Virginia. And then you can see how all the legislators voted to get those on the ballot. You can see how the voters had voted when we carried them during session, and then we'll see the outcome additionally of how they end up, if they ended up passing, what the vote results are later on in the next election. But yeah, as far as like Florida, that's been really interesting how voters across the state, regardless of party, are weighing in on those issues, focused on the issues, not so much like a party dynamic. So that's been something really interesting that we're excited to be able to kind of expand on that to other bills too.
Well, that's really a necessity because, frankly, whoever is supporting the particular addendum to the Florida Constitution and whoever is not, they create a sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Propaganda on both sides. And really what we need is clarity. So if we're able to say, here's this amendment, it was a particular amendment years ago sponsored by a personal injury attorney for legalizing marijuana. And nobody really understood. There was another one about legalizing gambling. And nobody really understood if you were for the amendment, were you for legal marijuana? Were you for bringing back gambling? Nobody even really understood that. And the propaganda from both sides that wanted to see it pass or fail was deceiving as well. So it'd be great to just have a biased organization say, if this particular amendment passes, this is the result of the amendment. And that was not out there. What was out there was all the talking points and all the pros and all the cons, but not really the idea that if it passed, what's next. And I think that's really important that we have that at our fingertips now.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, like you said, there's a lot of money that goes into it and there's messaging on both sides. So, yeah, like in Virginia with this mid-decade redistricting amendment, there's been, like, I've seen the emails, the communications about misinformation being spread from one side about even like going as far to say that the governor opposes this, and then the other side having to come back and say like, no, she supports this. So yeah, being able to kind of provide that resource so people can have that non-partisan, unbiased information, and then using the chatbot tool to be able to ask questions. And then even additionally in Arizona, I've been learning a lot more about the state at the state level there too. They had, I think it was like 30 potential ballot measures that were kind of going through the legislature that had been introduced. So we had posted about, I think we're up to about 8 or so of those or maybe 10 at the state level that may appear on the ballot. So even in like other states like that, there's way more that people have to kind of figure out, work through, ask questions about that'll appear on their ballot. So yeah, I think it's super helpful in states like that too.
And you know what's really interesting to me is something Donald Trump once said. He said, if voting were easier, we would never win an election. Imagine if voters were more informed. Who would prevail in that? We don't even know the answer yet, right? Because there has been nothing like this before. But if I found the argument was mail-in voting and COVID, and everybody said there was 20 million additional votes because Biden let in 20 million illegal immigrants. And I'm like, I don't really think their first thing on their mind was registering to vote, but I'm not going to argue the point. But now my where I'm landing with this is that when he made that statement, it's true. Generally, there is a consensus that Democrats are lazier than Republicans. And when it comes to, if you see an old lady with a walker and a bottle of water, you can assume, standing in line to vote, you can assume she's a Republican. And, and then comes, I mean, I'm just thinking out loud. Granted, there's no reason, there's no documentation on that point. I'm just thinking out loud. But if voters were more informed, this by where I'm landing with this, imagine the amount of, especially on these special sessions of Congress, especially on these emergency, what do they call them? Like, what if somebody dies and they have an emergency election that the governor in a particular state cannot nominate? It really goes back to an election. I mean, this is just an incredible tool for every voter. And that's why I say we really need to start it from the cradle up. We really need to get the word out to schools and create projects. And if the schools aren't receptive to the idea, how about getting them out to local restaurants? And so leads me to my next question. How is funding? How does that work for you? Do you get paid for this service, or is it a 501(c), or how does that all work?
Yeah, so our nonprofit, we have a C3, C4 status, and our team's all volunteers. So we really have like a lot of dedicated supporters that believe in this, that are really helping to make it happen. So it's grassroots funded. We've gotten some grants, and we actually had bipartisan support for funding from the Florida state legislature as a way to get more input from voters, to provide that info for legislators, and also do a pilot program at the local level. And it made it all the way through the legislature into the budget, and then Ron DeSantis line item vetoed it. So that was, yeah, one source of funding we almost had, but it's definitely a very grassroots organization, and a lot of volunteers that are really making this really successful.
So does that beg the question, why did he line item veto? Is it
Yeah, it would have been nice to get an answer, a reasoning for it, but I think we were one of more than a few organizations that got targeted in that. I don't even know what the situation was, but there were a lot of people that got their funding line item vetoed by the governor. But yeah, I wish we had some insight as to why.
I would love to know why, because I just wonder if he's one of them that just doesn't really deliver on his promises and he just doesn't want to be tracked. But
Mhm.
I guess we may never know the answer to that question. But it's an incredible initiative. And I hope you get, I think you're going in a great direction. You're going to wind up with the funding. I think and like you said, then that there's the grants and stuff, but what else? What other areas could you expand in this particular approach?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's a really unique tool where it applies to not only individual voters, but also organizations. I feel like it can help with their organizing, like within their engagement within their volunteers, outreach to the community, and like GOTV, if you're doing issue advocacy on legislation. I feel like it applies really well there. And like I had mentioned, we're posting those stances organizations are taking. So yeah, I think that's one way that's been really helpful for us to expand, is by reaching out to organizations, showing them how they can use this, and it can be a useful way to get reliable data from. We're verifying everyone's a real voter, registered voter, and then that's how we can get that district level data too. So by providing this tool, that's where organizations can use it to have that data to then meet with legislators and say, hey, look, this is real reliable data, what the voters want, to kind of help make their case too. So that's one way that we've been kind of doing a lot of outreach, expanding. And then especially with candidates and legislators, we've had some legislators, candidates that have endorsed. And as I had mentioned, Tom Keene was our first one in 2023. And we've had a lot more since then. So that's a way where they can use this to hear from voters, compile that input, inform their voting. And then we have a candidate that's gone as far, he's running for Congress in Florida, to say, however the majority of voters vote in his district is how he's going to ultimately vote on the bill. So he's got a system for really informing. I think that's kind of where we should be headed, like the direction we should head with our legislators, really informing their voters of the legislation, what's going on, giving them that insight. And then he'll inform them about like the pros and the cons, both sides of the issue, and then give his analysis of it. And then ultimately voters are the ones weighing in. So yeah, that's another way that we've been expanding. And even in like social media, I think there's a lot of potential that we're still building in that realm. And I think having a lot of like powerful voices helping spread the word, and yeah, media podcast hosts like yourself, that's another great way to help us advance this project to get more people using it, weighing in.
So that's how I got into podcasting. I ran for office and I realized running for office was all about raising money. And I would say I'm really not about raising money. I'm about raising awareness. So I was basically labeled an idiot the first time, and then every other time I said it, right? And I was okay with that, but I also realized there's no point in running for office. So I created the podcast. So bringing the awareness, let's do the awareness thing real quick, because this has been an incredible interview. But let's talk about awareness for a second. Right now, current event, the president got into a tiff with the Pope. And so from what I'm reading, He's nixed $11 million from Catholic Charities funding. Okay, so, and they do a lot of good. Strangely enough, my uncle, I don't know how the connection, but my uncle was a big executive at Catholic Charities and he did a great job and they did great stuff. Let's just say that happened. I can't confirm or deny it. I really tried hard to get an understanding of what just happened. I think it may have really happened. Would that ever be something that you present on your site that this happened? Not necessarily form an opinion, but could you create an understanding of how it would affect that lack of the $11 million for this Catholic Charities to use to operate? Is that something you would ever bring to the awareness table?
That's an interesting case. I think, yeah, it's so far it's been focused on bills, legislation. We have talked about an interest in doing like some form of participatory budgeting where people can weigh in on funding issues, where their taxes are going. But yeah, as far as like unique cases like that, I'm not sure about. That's
We don't know yet, right? But you got a lot on the table, including getting to 50 states in the next year.
yeah, and long term, we'd like to be at the local level doing like county school board. So yeah,
Oh,
that's
yeah, that would
there's
be
lots of
incredible
things we
too.
can do with
Yeah.
this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be huge. Oh, absolutely. That's my biggest wheelhouse is education and really understanding what's going on with our education system. And I think this is a great tool that I'm going to definitely keep my hand on the pulse of because when I saw Ramon and his interest in doing the podcast and then he just emailed me, I was like, oh, absolutely. Let me talk to Sadie. Yes, that's even because you're every day at the pulse of this. And
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, Ramon, it's interesting. He's got the technology background, which I feel like our political system, democracy building, organizing is sometimes behind on the technology that can really help advance the work that we're doing. So he kind of brings in a lot of that perspective of the technology, the tools, and then my background's more so from the organizing outreach. So yeah, it's been really interesting kind of trying to integrate this into what a lot of the current methods are being used for organizing outreach.
this is just going to be incredible. And I like when we talk about technology in general, technology, social media, is even though AI started out with a bad rap, social media has always had a bad rap and still hasn't really improved its image at all. Fact of the matter is, a lot of good is coming out of what's going on today. Even the current I don't know that we're in a political crisis. Some people love it, some people hate it. We are in a sort of a wrecking ball situation here. It's all gonna, in the long run, it's all gonna really be a lot better. And this is one of those things that's gonna make it significantly better because informing voters, it's no longer gonna be about like Kamala Harris spent $1.5 billion on billboards. Nobody knew if she stood for anything other than raising money. So it would be nice to know, even if when she was a senator, if you started with her career with this site as a senator and understand how she voted, you would have had a better understanding of her as a presidential candidate. So this really changes the dynamics of a lot of things. So Sadie, I really appreciate your time. You've been an incredible interview. You want to just tell us all about how you access the site and how?
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, on that topic, I was going to add too, I think like kind of where our political system has gone, I feel like a lot of people feel powerless, like they don't have much of a say. I mean, there's gerrymandering going on at the state levels to where the politicians, the voters in their district are kind of more so to one side than it's not very well balanced to where those voters feel like they don't have much of a say, much representation. So I do feel like there's a lot of interest in kind of shifting to something like this. There's a lot of interest in the political system right now for voters being more like registering more as independents. So I think the kind of taking the focus off of so much of the two-party system, the right versus left, the whole like competitiveness of it to where I feel like it's gone. I feel like that's kind of added I toxicity is like the word that comes to mind for me to where it's just so polarizing and like I guess like hate fueled to where there's so much back and forth, this person versus that. So I think this is really interesting about just really focusing on the actual objective topics, the issues of the bill, getting voters more informed about that, I think is what got me like more interested in being politically engaged and just really seeing like the policies I think will help bring more people into the political system and then giving them this tool to where the more voters we get weighing in, that's where it'll really carry more weight. The more people, that's where you can get that power and numbers effect. We can have more of a voice for the voters and what they want, put more pressure on legislators, influence how they're voting. So I really like that kind of direction that I feel like we're helping to shift our political system in. So as far as like people participating, weighing in, has kind of been built with a partnership with Votes. It's VOATZ. So they're real certified mobile voting technology, and we're using their technology. They've been used for actual elections, so we're just expanding that use to where voters can weigh in directly on legislation. So any voter can go to our website's digitaldemocracyproject.org. There's an explainer video, you can check that out. There's a vote tab, or you can select to enroll, and it'll direct you to the page to kind of walk you through how to get into the Votes app, get verified. And there's a mobile app version or a web app version. It takes about 2 minutes or so to get verified. And once you get verified, you're able to vote on, I think we're up to over 120 bills at the federal level for the current session. So any voter at any time is still able to weigh in on those until the session ends. So yeah, the Votes technology, there's more info about their technology on our website. But that's kind of where our main focus is getting more people weighing in on the bills, getting that input from voters. And that's really, if people are listening, that's definitely what we'd like a way to get started weighing in and then helping to spread the word, empower more voters.
This is huge. This is going to be huge. It's funny to me because I know for a fact if somebody finally does prevail and beats an incumbent, or the incumbent dies and a newcomer comes into the House, the first thing is the older timers grab them to the side and say, "You're going to vote for us. Just keep your mouth shut." And now that changes it all. Just, you're going to toe the party line and just keep your mouth shut. We don't need you speaking on the floor. We don't need you forging opinions. We just need you to vote like we tell you to vote. That changes everything. This changes everything. It dismantles the whole hierarchy as we know it. And it's just incredible. And I'm always so enthusiastic about the time that we live in now, because there's so much good happening, and there's a lot of concerning things happening too, but for sure. But there's so much good happening, and it's because of programs and initiatives like this. And this is not just an initiative anymore. This is huge. This is national. National. It's full blown. You're in 7 states. You're going to be at all 50 soon, and it's going to change everything. And the only thing I can see that I'm going to do my due diligence on is getting the word out, because I've always believed in the sense of creating some sort of online life skills incentive-based program, teaching young people about all the organizations and all the things they really know to succeed in this life, because life has gotten more complicated. It seems like the petri dish of the underclass is the fact that we don't really do much to get our kids informed. And so I really want to change that. And I'm going to do my part in getting the word out about this, because this is huge. And I want young people to start now learning about it and using it, showing their parents how to use it. Don't vote for that guy. He's an idiot. Look at this. And I would love to, I'd love to be a part of that, a fly on the wall for that kitchen table conversation. But
Yeah, we definitely appreciate your help spreading the word. And yeah, we want this to be a really grassroots movement of people weighing in and helping tell others to also weigh in, have their say on legislation. And yeah, all about putting that power in the hands of voters, giving them more of a say, more of a seat at the table in the legislative process.
this is great. I really appreciate you, Sadie. This has been a wonderful conversation. I'm so thankful you took the time to provide me the option of having you on.
Yeah, he can definitely give you a deep dive on the technology details of it too. That's definitely not my
Yeah, this was a great. I want both sides. Yeah, I'm all about content. My partner's all about technology, and I
Okay.
don't. And I don't. When sometimes she tells me to do the simplest thing, and I have to call my 13-year-old over to show me where it's.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
I'm sure you're in way better position than me when it comes to the technology, but I'm okay with what things are going really well for us. So as far as trying to get going, thank you so much, Sadie. Thank you so much. Talk to you
Of
soon.
course, yeah, thank you. Yeah, sounds good.
Sadie Holzmeyer, National Organizing Director of the Digital Democracy Project. Digital Democracy Project is going to be a game changer in politics in America. We're no longer going to see or hear the Bill Clintons promising kosher kitchens in the White House. We're going to have real promises and real understanding of what they did with those promises. So I look forward to it. Thank you so much, Sadie.
Yeah, thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye.